Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to take a closer look at somebody who you probably only know from tabloid headlines, Anna Nicole Smith. But, behind that kind of glamorous image and all the controversy, there's actually a really fascinating story. A story of ambition and tragedy and a life that's way more complex than the media let on.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. You know how we love to simplify complex lives, right? We take these complicated people and we boil them down to these simple stories that are, easy to digest, easy to understand. And Anna Nicole is like a perfect example of that, I think.
And today we are going to try to do her justice. We're going to really dive into the woman behind those headlines, and we're going to use a 2015 episode of the podcast You're Wrong About as our guide. And we're going to pull in some other contemporary sources as well. So if you think, Anna Nicole Smith, get ready to be wrong.
Yeah, we're going back to the very beginning to a small town in Texas where Vicki Lynn Hogan, the woman who would become Anna Nicole Smith, was born. And let me tell you, her life was anything but glamorous.
Yeah, we're talking poverty, difficult family life, and really just, experiences that would leave a mark on anybody. And she actually has a quote that I think really captures the pain of her childhood.
Oh, yeah.
She said, "You want to hear my child life? You want to hear all the things she did to me, all the things she let my stepfather do to me or let my brother do to me or my sister? No way. All the beatings and the whipping and the rape, that's my mother. Holy cess."
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. And it really reminds you that behind this persona, that she built, there was a real person, who had been through a lot. And we need to keep that in mind as we, learn more about her story.
Absolutely.
It makes you think, how does someone go from stealing toilet paper from restaurant bathrooms because their family couldn't afford it, to becoming like a world-famous model? It wasn't an easy road.
No, it wasn't. She dropped out of high school in ninth grade. She worked at Jim's Crispy Fried Chicken. She got married young, had a son at 16. Those were tough years, a lot of challenges, a lot of uncertainty.
But even through all that, you can see this spark, this ambition, a drive to want something more. And this is really where we see the beginning of this transformation.
Yeah.
From Vicki Lynn to Anna Nicole. It's like she starts to reinvent herself.
Yeah, and it's very deliberate. She dyes her hair blonde. She has multiple breast augmentation surgeries, and she's working as a stripper. She's really honing those performance skills. These are all steps that she's taking to craft an image that she believes is going to bring her success.
It's like she's building a character. Her persona that's going to allow her to escape her past and really become someone new.
Exactly. And it was a striking persona, this confidence, the sensuality, even a bit of vulnerability. And it really resonated with people. It kind of makes you think about how we all craft personas to some extent, right? We present ourselves to the world in a way that may or may not reflect who we really are on the inside.
That's true. And it was this persona that caught the eye of J. Howard Marshall, the oil tycoon, who would become a huge part of her life. Now, their relationship is usually simplified to this gold digger narrative, but it was way more complicated than that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, got to remember, she was already a successful model when they met. She was on billboards and magazines. There were even rumors of car accidents in Norway because people were so distracted by her image. So to say she was just after his money, that's a pretty big oversimplification.
Yeah, and from what we learned, Marshall pursued her for years before she even agreed to marry him. He was totally smitten, showering her with lavish gifts, promising to take care of her and her son.
Yeah, he even proposed multiple times before she finally said yes. So this wasn't a case of her chasing after a rich guy. It was a really complex dynamic. They both had their own needs and desires that they brought to the relationship.
And let's be real, who wouldn't be tempted by the idea of financial security and luxury, especially after going through what she went through early in life. But public perception, man, they turned on her quickly. As soon as they got married in 1994, the media just went crazy. The age difference was all over the place. She was painted as a gold digger. He was seen as this, doddering old fool. It was a classic case of judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, and that judgment had real consequences. I mean, she became the target of ridicule, mocked for her weight gain, for her personal struggles. It's like she was being punished for daring to challenge societal norms, around age, beauty, and wealth. Sadly, the ridicule only got worse after Marshall's death, just a year after they got married. The legal battle over his estate was a media frenzy that went on for years and eventually ended up in front of the Supreme Court not once, but twice.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the case was called Marshall v. Marshall. And it was all about whether Anna Nicole was entitled to any part of J. Howard Marshall's fortune.
Oh, it was a complete mess. Probate matters, bankruptcy filings, accusations of forged wills. It was wild. There was even a point where the judge actually begged to be taken off the case. He was so frustrated with the whole thing. It was like a Shakespearean drama, family feuds, corporate intrigue, billions of dollars on the line.
Wow. But through all that, the legal stuff, the media attention, and Anna Nicole was also dealing with some serious personal struggles, things that would eventually lead to a tragic ending. But we'll get into all of that after a quick break. Be sure to subscribe to the deep dive so you don't miss the rest of this episode.
It's important to remember all this was happening, those personal struggles in the context of like a bigger societal thing. We talked about how she was ridiculed for challenging these norms, right? But the media, they were a huge part of that.
Right. It wasn't just, the tabloids. It was like mainstream news, too. They turned her into this caricature,
Yeah.
focused on the whole gold digger thing and her eccentricities.
Yeah, exactly. And it's especially striking when you think about that reality show that came out in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah. The Anna Nicole show. I watched that. I thought it was just harmless fun.
Yeah.
But looking back now, it's pretty obvious how exploitative it was.
Oh, yeah. The network knew all about her addiction issues, her mental health struggles, the financial pressure she was under, and they just packaged it as entertainment. Catchy theme song, lighthearted background music, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they were trying to make light of this really dark situation.
Yeah.
And the worst part is the audience, me included, we were all in on it. We
Yeah.
tuned in, we laughed, we consumed her pain, and we didn't really get how bad things actually were.
It really makes you think about our responsibility as, media consumers. How often do we just accept these stories we're told without thinking about, the harm they might be causing or the biases they might be pushing?
It's a tough question. And it makes the tragedy of her last few years even more heartbreaking. She achieved all this fame and fortune she always wanted, but she ended up isolated, battling addiction, struggling to connect with her son, Daniel.
And then just when it seemed like things might be getting better with the birth of her daughter in 2006, tragedy struck again. Her son Daniel died from an accidental overdose just days after meeting his baby sister.
He was only 20 years old, God.
Yeah.
It's just unimaginable, the pain she must have felt losing her son like that.
Yeah, the sources describe her as just completely heartbroken. Her spirit was broken, and after that, her decline was rapid. She was fighting a high fever. She had infected abscesses from injecting weight loss drugs. She was taking a ton of prescription meds just to get by.
Wow, she was basically drowning in grief, Her body was wrecked from years of trauma and substance abuse, and then just 5 months after Daniel's death, Anna Nicole herself was gone.
An accidental overdose at 39 years old. A truly tragic end to a life that had such incredible highs and such devastating lows.
And how did the media react? Pretty much how you'd expect. A lot of told you so's. Like her death was just the punchline to some big cosmic joke.
It's a sad reminder of how quickly we dehumanize people who don't fit into our neat little boxes. We focus on the surface, the sensationalized stuff, and we miss the complexity, the vulnerability, the things that actually make us human.
Yeah. But there were those moments, where the real Anna Nicole came through, like during her testimony in one of the Marshall v. Marshall court battles.
Oh, right. She talked about how much she loved Jay Howard, how kind he was to her, how he made her feel safe.
And you got to remember how she was treated by the opposing counsel, Rusty Hardin, this big-time Houston defense attorney known for his dramatic courtroom stuff. He basically accused her of faking her grief, even asked if she was taking acting lessons.
What? That's awful.
Yeah, it was a clear attempt to discredit her, paint her as this manipulative gold digger. And how did she respond? Screw you, Rusty.
Oh, wow.
Just a raw human reaction to being patronized and disbelieved. She might have been playing a role for the public, but in that moment, the real Anna Nicole, the grieving widow she came through.
Yeah, it reminds you that behind the persona, behind the headlines and the media circus, there was a real person with real feelings. A woman who loved and lost and deserved to be treated with respect.
And speaking of Jay Howard, we can't forget he was a willing participant in all this. He pursued her, he showered her with affection and gifts, he made promises,
Exactly. To just say she was the manipulator in that relationship ignores his own choices, his own desires, his own complexities.
Yeah, it's like we're so uncomfortable with the idea of an older, wealthy man being genuinely attracted to a younger woman that we have to make up these stories of deception and control.
And by doing that, we miss the chance to really look at the bigger picture, the power dynamics, the obsession with youth and beauty, the way women are often reduced to their looks.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life of Anna Nicole Smith, what can we learn from her story? What are the key takeaways here? It's tough, It's like a cautionary tale, but also a reminder to look deeper than the surface.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's a reminder to question those assumptions we all have, resist that urge to oversimplify complex lives into these neat little narratives. Anna Nicole's story reminds us that there's always more to the story than what we see in those headlines.
And the media, they play a big role in shaping those narratives,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes in ways that can be really harmful and exploitative.
Absolutely. And as consumers of media, we have a responsibility to think critically, to question the information we're given, and to be aware of how what we watch, what we read, how that impacts the people involved.
So in a way, Anna Nicole's story is also like a reflection of us, you know,
Hmm.
our society, our obsession with celebrity, our tendency to judge anyone who doesn't fit in.
Yeah, totally. It reflects our obsession with youth and beauty, our discomfort with relationships that don't fit the mold, the way we reduce women to just their physical appearance.
It's a lot to think about, that's for sure. But it's an important conversation to have. And hopefully by understanding Anna Nicole's story, maybe we can become more aware of our own biases, more compassionate towards people who are different from us.
I agree. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own humanity, regardless of their background, their choices, or the stories that people tell about them.
And it's about remembering that there's always more to the story than meets the eye. So the next time you see a headline about someone like Anna Nicole Smith, take a second, pause, question the narrative. Consider the possibility that there's a much richer, more complex story there just waiting to be discovered.
That's a great point. And that's really what we're all about here on The Deep Dive, encouraging you, our listeners, to dig a little deeper, to explore those nuances, to challenge your own assumptions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Anna Nicole Smith. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even a little bit thought-provoking. And if you did, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of fascinating people and events just like this one.